Welcome everyone to the Tankers Reef 2.0 Divers webinar. We're going to have a little discussion here about the project. Click on that. So who am I? I am Keith Rootsaert. I'm with the California Kelp Restoration Corps, a membership 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And the board of directors is Peter Ottersbach, who's on the call today, Michelle Allen, Mary Jo Nelson, who many of you know from the Beach Hopper, too. She's a captain there. And Bruce Watkins, who resides in Hawaii. So tonight's agenda, I want to go through some things. We want to talk about a little bit of the background and the legal authority that we have to do what we're doing. Talk about the Tankers Reef project, the first one. We didn't call it 1.0. We thought we were doing it forever. But then we want to talk about the kelp restoration specialty diver certification, just a little overview for people who perhaps are not familiar with the program and how to get involved. Then update the project status, how this all went down, and some statistics from our efforts. We have a section on methods development. We're trying to get better and more efficient at what we're doing as we're doing it. And now Tankers Reef 2.0. This is the latest version of this project that we're going to be embarking on this summer, and future expansion provisions that could happen this year. So kelp, why kelp? Why do we care about kelp? So kelp makes oxygen and it dampens waves and it reduces beach erosion. And on that point right there, we might have found a way to get into some of these cities that we're doing work in by making kelp restoration a part of their local coastal plan for beach erosion and to combat sea level rise, because that the kelp reduces the erosion of the beaches. Particularly Carmel has been very interested in doing this work over there. Kelp makes good for ice cream and gunpowder, and there's over 800 species live in the kelp forest. It sequesters 20 times more carbon than trees. I even heard 30 times as much. Depends on the tree, I guess. And it doesn't burn like a forest fire, and you don't have to keep watering it. It's drought tolerant. This actually happened in the course of the project, where this is our site in the foreground. We have the kelp and the buoy there, and up on the in the terrestrial forest on land, somebody deliberately hit a power pole and started a fire. And right away, there was helicopters there. There was air tankers dropping stuff on it. Let me admit everybody, and they put out that fire. And that's the difference, is that on land, someone will come and put out that fire. But when it comes to in the ocean, it's up to us. There is no water forest service. So here it is. So I'm just going to cut a little bit through all that backstory and say that we had a lot of big kelp forests in Monterey for a long time. And those kelp forests, because of a lot of multiple stressors, heat, water quality, lack of predators like sea stars, um, uh, and lack of really warm water, really is difficult for kelp to grow. And these places became urchin barrens. And unfortunately, around the Monterey Peninsula where we are working, they the urchins just went all over this area, and a lot of them are in marine protected areas. And these marine protected areas protect the urchins from us and for our ability to go there and to remove them with the regular fish and game rules. So I clicked on it again. So we started filing for a lot of petitions, and the first ones were by Bruce Watkins and myself. He wrote the petition, and that was denied in 2017. We tried in 2019. Finally, in 2020, everyone started showing up to the meetings, and we managed to get Tankers Reef legal on April 1st of 2021 for 3 years. We were told if we did really well at it, we could continue. So that's what we expected, because we did really well. But they canceled our project in 2024. We applied for expansion in November of 21. I tried for a kelp restoration managed permit. It was not a thing. Did not let that happen. That was denied. We applied for a scientific collecting permit for almost 2 years, and then that was denied. Um, We have a 2023 Decadal Management Review petition that is still in consideration, and it's a really big petition. I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of this presentation. And we also tried in 2024 to have a recreational airlift tool, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later on. But they denied that for recreational use. It could only be for commercial use. And we also asked for uh, the ability to call urchins in 10 coastal counties, all the way up in Humboldt, all the way down through Santa Barbara County to be able to call urchins. And that was denied as well. So what we did get approved in 2021 was the Tankers Reef project, the 1.0 version of this project. So this red line around the outside is the regulatory boundary where we're allowed by a change in Fish and Game Commission regulations, sport fishing rules, to be able to call an unlimited number of purple and red urchins in this place. So the area in mustard color right here, this strange looking polygon, that is historically where kelp has been in this place over the last 30 years. And when on there's a sand channel in the middle, and we were going to call on this side of it, on the left side of it, the west side, and on the east side, don't do any calling, and that would be the experimental area. This in 2021, when we arrived, there was a kelp forest that formed where this little green dots are right here. That was where the kelp forest was. And we set up a cable grid, and I'll have a little more about that later. It's a 2.5 acre cable grid bolted to the bottom in this place for all of the calling effort and for all the scientific monitoring to occur within that square. Have you note too that like this is kind of a strange area. Like this is kind of a shale reef here. It's got big flat rocks and little ledges that are in it. It's like an old river basin when the ocean was lower than it is now. And there's other areas around the Monterey Peninsula that are granite reefs, but they're in the marine protected area. And I'm going to get back to that later on because that's our future aspiration is to go into the granite reefs in this area. So the goals of the project, many of you have already are familiar with this, is do it safely, to train the divers to cull the urchins without harming other marine life was a big criteria, not to disturb sea otters and so on, and to reduce the purple and red urchin density below 2 per square meter in the treatment area. And we did do that. And Department of Fish and Wildlife and Reef Check and also the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary monitored the effort to see how we met the goals. So you don't have to believe me, believe them. They were the ones counting everything. I'm going to admit a couple more people. And the other Tankers Reef project goals are to establish a giant kelp forest at Tankers Reef, provide a giant kelp spore bank for future kelp forest recovery, monitor changes in the kelp forest community, that's all the invertebrates and the fish, and to provide habitat for southern sea otters. They forage in this kelp forest, and every time we go there, we count how many sea otters are on the kelp site. So this is our ask of everyone, is that the kelp forest needs you. We need your help in doing this, and we have a kelp forest restoration specialty class. They're now available at the dive shops for you to go and take the class. You can ask them. They're running a wait list right now. It's a pretty good size wait list at some of these places. There, if you are in PADI and you want additional, if you're in the PADI regimen of diving, you can get a PADI certification at Aquarius in Monterey. It's on Del Monte there, I think. It's not the Lighthouse. I guess it's called Del Monte at that point. I could be totally wrong. Diver Dan's in Santa Clara is another place where you can sign up for the class too. And Bamboo Reef in Monterey. And here's a few slides that are representative of the course. And these are the prerequisites for the course. I'm going to kind of go through them quickly. Open water certification, comfort diving in Monterey in 20 dives. If you're like, I always dove in Hawaii before, like maybe this is not something you want to do right in the cold water. So you can maintain a neutral buoyancy. skilled with a beach or boat entry and exit. That's how we'll be entering the site. And use a compass, very good tool to know, be able to know here there is a site with lines, and you need to know kind of which direction you're going. If you have doubts about these skills, talk to your instructor. And you can combine the class maybe with peak buoyancy and how to use a compass and the course as a combo package, and you get the skills that you'll need to do the work safely. Before you go, these are the things you're going to need to get. First thing is a fishing license. They keep raising the rates on us. Now it is $62.90. We first started this, I think it was 52 or 48 or something, but every year it goes up. Buy a hammer. The hammer that we use is this cheap Amazon Prime hammer for $8.06. There's a Home Depot hammer, 627. I'm sure these prices have all gone up by now. But Harbor Freight, that one's still the same, $5.99. Good deal. I like that hammer a lot. It's got a nice, good throw on it. And it's basically looks like this. It's a spring handle meant for welding. You would chip the slag off of a weld. Uh, that's the things. You also need some other little parts. You need a small slate to record some data on it. Shears or a knife, always a good idea to be able to do that. And to have a surface marker buoy. We're out there kind of in the middle of a big ocean. Need a surface marker buoy so that you can signal for your own safety that boats and so on know where you are. And a whistle, always essential piece of equipment, and some clips to hold things onto, including your hammer. And there's another piece you'll need, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Uh, Before you go out there, I'm just kind of reminding people you need to get a lane assignment to where to go on the site. They are available on the G2KR.com website. Get an assignment, and then you go there and fulfill the assignment. And you get a grid it's still saying call urchins, but we're going to go there and remove urchins. And only one buddy needs to get an assignment for both of the divers if there's two of you diving on that assignment. So, and you and your instructor, you'll practice this in the class, how to get the assignments and how to enter them. This is what the method looks like. We have an underwater cable grid uh, out there at tankers. The grid is numbered from A to K. There's no I, and there are dividers between them. But we haven't set the dividers up just yet. But you can start at the A mark and just come down in the area. It's not as specific as it was last time we were out there. The other thing that we can do is we set up a single buoy and just run a cable down in the direction of the swell. Usually we go to the south, and then you go down to a mark and then head out east or west from that line, removing the urchins as you go along that line. Oh, Mary saw that picture of me. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. That was kind of the point was I had short hair when I started this, and now it's just getting longer and longer. This is what it looks like under there at Tankers Reef. We this picture was from Tim Nelson, and there's all these little urchins, and they go into these holes into the soft shale rock. These holes were probably not made by these urchins, probably the ancestors of these urchins. You know, this boom and bust of urchins has happened probably repeatedly in the past. And when they're on the kelp, the urchins burrow into the holdfast of the kelp and undermine that holdfast. This is at the top of the kelp where the two main sipes come together. And that's the tastiest spot of the kelp. There's always an urchin right in that spot. And this picture right here, it's a little bit hard to see here, but these are after we went through and removed by targeting all the urchins, we targeted a lot of big urchins. They were the first to go. And what happened after we did that was we got a lot of little ones that survived that because we didn't see them and they were too small or they were invisible, and then they matured and became visible. And so then we had all these little urchins in in the holdfast of the kelp, and we had to pick through them all and then put them on the bottom and cull them that way. It was really kind of a pain in the butt, but it is indicative of what happens in these situations that if you just target the big ones and leave the small ones, you might just make it worse over time by not going back repeatedly and removing these small urchins. This is a little summary of what happened in the project. So when we first started, there was in this blue color, that's where the kelp was out in this place. We just kind of documented where it was. And then in the course of doing the work, we found that in 2022, we moved this kelp forest and it became on the south side, that kelp that we had before became reproductive, and the spores went this way into this kelp forest here and made 11 acres of kelp forest. So it went from 8 acres to 11 acres. And in 2023, just like spontaneously, some kelp formed out here for a little while. Um, I I heard from Brian and others that they went there and it was a lot of Desmorestia. The acid weed was in this place and there was giant kelp in it, but not that many urchins were in that kelp forest. So it kind of has follow-on effects when you remove a bunch of urchins. So this was our plan. It was to go in 2023 and expand back to the north where it was before and fill in these areas and go up here and remove all these urchins in this place. But then the Department of Fish and Wildlife and Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and Ocean Protection Council, they wrote a letter to the commission saying that they needed to sunset the project for the sake of the experiment so that they can make sure that these urchins were really going to eat that kelp and if the kelp had staying power after the divers left. So as a way to try to preserve the project, they said, well, you can keep the place if you go 100 meters away. So we set the orange buoy 100 meters away and we went down this line and we did all this work along this area and in this space in between the orange line and the grid, as we call it, underwater grid. And we culled a bunch of urchins in here and but we didn't get any kelp to grow there that year. The only kelp we saw was a piece down here. The time we ended up in November, December of 23, we didn't have any kelp growth on that site. And this is what it kind of looked like when the project was sunsetted in April of 24. We only had 2.3 acres of kelp on part of the site and a little bit of kelp along these sections of the perimeter. But then, to our amazement, we actually got some kelp to grow in the area where we had called in the previous fall. This kelp did grow in that space and grew out over here. And this was documented by Stephen Passetti and Scott Parsons. We went around with a boat and we mapped all this area, and that's what we determined that kelp had grown in the place we had called over there. So this is our project performance dashboard. All of our data is kept through Salesforce, and we have Tableau, which is a visualization tool of the set of the Salesforce data. So we called almost 750,000 urchins over that period, which was about 2 years and 3 months. When we had, well, here's the time. We called this many urchins from April of 21 until December of 23. And this is urchins called over time, then the work rate. So we know the work rate because we know how fast people were calling, and how many urchins they called over how much time. And so we have that. And also the efficiency, the cost per unit of effort over time, how that was affected. This is our grid measurement. So in green is when people were diving on the grid. That was in green. So you can see how we started out working on the grid, but the gray area is the areas outside of the grid, right? So it wasn't enough to just remove the urchins in that grid area because urchins were just pouring on from around the grid and migrating back onto the site. So we did a lot of our effort. Actually, 2/3 of our effort was outside of the grid. We actually culled a total area of 25 acres on the site. This is the project engagement. This is the number of urchinators, number of divers, 1,527 safe dives on the project, number of hours. This is an interesting number, I thought, this 8.7 number of passes. So we know how far people went and we know what their width was as they went down the line. And so what we were able to determine is that we had passed over the grid a total of 8.7 times in rotation going around, passing over that area. So it takes a continued, a lot of effort in the area to remove them by culling them, right? Because they get bigger. Either it's the three M's, three. So either they moved on, they migrated on to the grid, or we missed them. It just happened that they were there, we didn't get them, or they matured on the site and became a big urchin for us to deal with. This is the reef check data. So reef check data is incorporated into our Tableau visualization. And this right here in brown is the kelp on the treatment area on the restoration site, and you can see how it kind of begins and then it goes up and up and up. By August of 23, it's up here. This is when the culling began and the culling stopped right here. The the urchins, on the other hand, they went down. They're kind of high right here. They got above that threshold, but it was just because it was winter time when they came back and surveyed that, and we hadn't been there all winter at that point. The control area is where the urchins they kind of stayed the same as they went along, and the kelp didn't really do much. So this is a pretty positive correlation that we were able to do this by the divers removing the urchins. The kelp was able to return, and you can also look in this tool at other things like what did the fish do? What did the invertebrates do? All those things that you can do that. You can find that uh, with this visualization tool. It's all available on our website. So here's a big picture of what happened with the reef check data. So here, like I said, the urchin density is going down until we stopped culling, and after we stopped culling, well, they came back up a little bit. And here are on the control. It just kind of meanders along here. There's an uptick here, and then it goes down. Don't know why. I've never been there. I hear it's horrible. And here is the giant kelp stipe density. So by densities, number of stipes on the site, this is kind of a general measure of biomass. It went up until we stopped culling, and then it came down a little bit, but not as low as it was, but it did come down quite a bit. But the other thing is uh, this is the number of individuals. So the individuals came down and kind of stayed down. So there's maybe more stipes and less individuals because some of these individuals were eaten by the urchins. So in the end, there were three projects that are in California that where recreational divers could go and remove urchins. There's one at Casper Cove that's been going on for 5 years. Uh, there's 352 dives were done on that site. This is their graph of their effort. And then there is the effort in Sonoma, which is at Stillwater Cove, and they're removing them manually with goodie bags, bringing them back to shore, and then putting them into garbage bags, garbage cans, and taking them out for fertilizer. And this map I thought was kind of interesting in that these little pink icons that are out here are where the dive shops are, the dive services. And the dive services are where the divers are, right? So most of the divers are around the Bay Area, is where people are located, and even in the Central Valley. What was difficult was for people to get to these places up in Sonoma and Casper Cove, uh, because it's just kind of it's a long drive and it's a windy road, and it's a day to get up there and a day to get back from these sites. So let me click the next one. And so we started looking at, what's the the removal rate, right? So how fast can people go if they're picking them with their hands or if they're calling them with a hammer, which is more efficient? So Reef did a study on that, and they had divers go out and do both and see how long it took them. So the hand calling can do 375 per hour as the average, and calling our average rate was 662 urchins per hour. But when we went up north to Mendocino, we found there was a guy in there named John Holcomb. He was an old, I shouldn't say old. He's nice, nice guy. He's been diving for a long time, 40 years of red urchin diving, and he made an airlift. And he said, I want people to share and use this. So I made one in the barn, and I have it, and it looks like this. So there's a nozzle at the bottom. There's a 10-inch diameter tube that goes up, and then it has an elbow. The air goes out the top, and the urchins tumble to the bottom. The air is injected at the bottom, and it makes little bubbles. And as the bubbles go up, so does the water, and it just vacuums them off the bottom. Then we have a rake, so you just go through and rake them into the airlift. It becomes very efficient, and what we found is that we were pulling up 18,500 per hour with the airlift, and even getting the little guys that were up at Casper Cove that were the result of removing all the big urchins. They got a bunch of little ones. They had 150 urchins per pound up there in Casper Cove. Just incredible. Just a nightmare of urchins. But it's much more efficient, and it basically the airlift makes a good urchin diver into a great urchin diver. And the other thing we found is we tried to expand the area where we could, to other counties to do this effort. And the objection was that these red urchin fisheries that in the north and in the south of this is the Central Coast area. Those red urchin fisheries kind of have exclusive claim on those sites, and they're sustaining uh, a red urchin fishery that eats kelp. And we have sea otters within this range, so we don't really have a red urchin fishery in this range. And because the healthy red urchins are eaten by these or the sea otters in the range. So Tankers Reef 2.0, right? Uh, Tankers Reef 2.0 the goal is to restore kelp for the otters by removing kelp grazers using existing regulations, right? That's the key to this, is that we're not going to, we've been trying to get regulations changed. We're not going to get them yet. We're going to go with what is on the books right now and just make it work. So commercial divers, they can collect purple urchins with an airlift, and that's what they'll be working on. They can collect purple urchins without any seasonal or day of week restrictions. They can do it any time of the year. So, but they can't collect red urchins because the red urchins are too small to be taken. So they will be collecting the purple urchins. They'll land the urchins at the Monterey Harbor, sort them for size, and the large ones that are 4.5 centimeters and larger, will go into a ranching project right there at the Monterey Abalone Company, which has hanging abalone, and they have a barge out there where they have baskets that are full of abalone, and they'll be full of urchins, and they'll feed them kelp and other products like ranch. You can give them spinach, other uh, agricultural waste products, and they will fatten up and they will be marketable for people. And we have a marketing program we're going to use to go along with that. The ones that are smaller than 4.5 centimeters will go into composting. So composting is the truck will pick it up and we'll mix it with soil, dry it out and things like that. Mix it with soil and it'll become a 25% marine uh, fertilizer. And that leaves for a recreational effort, the divers can collect 35 red urchins. So, as Brian wisely pointed out, there is a restriction for 1.5 uh, for urchins that are too small. They call them shorts for the urchin fleet. That's a red urchin that's between 3.5 inches and 1.5 inches. So we want to target those urchins that are 1 inch and larger, that are red urchins, 1 inch and larger, and we can get 35 red urchins, and we got to put them in a goodie bag, and then we got to deal with that and bring it home and dispose of it at home. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. The recreational diver activities will not be assisting the divers in collecting the purple urchins. That's against the rules for us to be helping them in any way. We can tell them where they are. We can go out and find them and tell them where they are. So we will get assignments at g2kr.com, like I had said. Hand collect 35 red urchins, 1 inch and larger per day. You and your buddy can get 70. It may seem a little bit less than we had before. We're getting 2,000 at a time, but there aren't as many red urchins as there are purple urchins. It would be very rare that someone would get 35 red urchins in a dive, but it's, for most people, this is just going to be fine to do that. And to report the harvest at g2kr.com, we've already modified the data entry portal so that it doesn't say call them, it says collect them, and it only goes up to 35. So this is go ahead and put your data in there and report the location in the comments of if you find these large aggregations of big purple urchins. Tell us where they are, either by telling us where they are on the grid or they're north of the grid or something. Or if you get out on a scooter, you could hunt around for them and then mark it with a surface marker buoy and then get a GPS device and tell us where that is so we can have those purple urchin commercial divers go and target those large urchins for the ranching effort. Kind of better to get the big urchins into the ranching earlier than later. Composting is not as doesn't take as long, right? Because it takes about 10, 12 weeks for the urchins to fatten up. So we want to get them into the ranching in the process as early as possible. And after the commercial divers have gone through the site on the grid, then the recreational divers will get assignments to go through and collect the 35 reds and also get 35 purples at that point, because you're just going to be bringing down the density in that area where the effort has gone and making sure that kelp can grow in that. So this is the area where we will be collecting the urchins. This is the grid as it was before. Here's the kelp that's on that site. The green line all the way around is the area where we'll be working. This area here is about 45, 50 feet out here on this end, and this is about 25 feet. It's pretty shallow over here. And we'll be working it a little bit at a time. We're using the buoys to direct people where to go out there. I know there's a lot of red urchins out in some of these areas, and it's going to take quite a bit of work to do them. So this is the additional tool that you will need for going out on the site, which is a goodie bag. We'll bring some goodie bags on the boat, but you can encourage to get your own. This is about a 15-inch by 30-inch goodie bag. I like this one in particular because it has canvas sides to it. It is made by Trident. We directed the instructors, where to pick these up, and there's the dive shops can buy them. And the equivalent like mesh bag that you can get is a yellow one. The yellow goodie bag is the one that is about 16 inches by 30 inches, and that's about the right size. You get one too big, then it'll just drag all over the place as you're trying to go. So you want it to be kind of about the right size. So here's some of the details of this. You will need to get that license. $62.90 for the resident, non-resident, crazy expensive for some reason. Take the urchins home or put them in the trash. What do you want to do with these things? We can't add them to the compost, unfortunately. You can put them in the trash. There's a dumpster at the dock. We could put them in there. You could try taking them home, dig a little hole in your garden, throw them in your garden, and see if they will help your plants grow. That would be a good thing to do with them. It may be that there's some uni in them, so maybe you can hop them all together and get enough uni together to have some friends, enjoy some uni. But there's not a whole lot in these urchins. The Beach Hopper 2 will be running on Wednesdays again. for this season, beginning on the 25th, which is the Wednesday, and the charters will be $60 to go per person to go out there. This is a good opportunity for the instructors to take students out on the boat. It's a great learning platform. And that's, I think, what like Bob Hallam would use the boat quite a bit. You can use any boat you like, of course, but that's just something we offer people, which is quite a discount over the usual charter. I think it's 115 or 125. Uh, Shore diving is really not advised at this point for bringing the urchins to shore. Swimming around with a 50-pound bag of urchins is no fun, and we don't want people to get injured, pulling them through waves. And I went to one event, uh, one of the earlier events at Ocean Cove, and they had all these divers bringing back urchins in bags, and uh, this one guy was there, and he was just mashing them into a garbage can. That was his job, but he was wearing like like Birkenstocks, you know. And this guy comes over and goes, "Here's your urchins," and drops the whole bag right on his foot, you know. Ah, that'll teach you. So the data portal is changed, like I said. So this is the next, and this is my next to last slide here. We are trying to get into the better places, and what is remaining are the state marine conservation areas where there's a lot of bigger urchins in there where we're not allowed to cull the urchins. And we're trying to ask the Fish and Game Commission to give us permission. So we submitted something in 2023 actually to do this. And that petition involves what we're doing here with removal, but many other things like culling the urchins, baiting and trapping the urchins, and commercial restoration by harvest of the perch urchins for urchin ranching, like we're already doing in this project. Managing acid weed. Acid weed is a big kind of problem for us. It's very acidic, and the urchins like to eat it, which dissolves their teeth, which is really great. So we just have to kind of manage where that defensive line of acid weed is and remove it so it doesn't interfere with kelp growth. We want to remove invasive species and know what they look like and if we find them, we have a rapid response to their spread. We want to be able to plant and transplant kelp into these areas where we clear all of these urchins. You know, if you clear an urchin barren, like anything could happen, right? So we want to make sure that we have success with the kelp going into these areas and manage the kelp canopy by pruning the kelp canopy, which it seems like it, it's like an apple tree, for instance, right? You prune the apple tree and you get more apples. It's kind of the same idea with kelp. They've known this since the 1930s that if you prune the kelp, it will make more kelp in the following years. So another thing we need to do is while we are doing restoration, we don't need a lot of fishing and so we want to have no fishing in the kelp forest while we're doing it, and change that rule to triplet fishing in these spaces. It turns out that fish eat urchins, and that by removing all these fish, you're probably giving the urchins a benefit. And then that's all I have for this session. So